In the near future, your identity in the UK may live in your phone, not just your driver's license or passport, but your proof of residence, your right to work, and even verified status. The government's proposed digital ID scheme aims to let you authenticate all of that instantly, using a certified app or identity provider bound into a trust framework. On paper, it's a sleek, modern solution to old bureaucratic burdens. Fewer face-to-face checks, less paperwork, faster onboarding for services. Behind the glossy promise lie deeper complexities. The trust framework is not itself a law. It is a technical and governance standard, defining how providers can issue and verify attributes, such as age, citizenship, immigration status, or residency. Those providers must be accredited, interoperable, and follow privacy and security rules. The government says this modular, multi-provider system protects user choice and spreads risk, but questions swirl. Who truly controls those attribute flows? How transparent the auditing is? Who can demand access? And how someone can dispute errors? This is where recent shifts in immigration law give urgency to what might otherwise seem niche. The UK has lately tightened routes to settlement, made family reunion more restrictive, and introduced stricter tests for indefinite leave. These policy moves change who is entitled to what and carve out more space for enforcement. As more people live with conditional status, temporary visas, or shifting entitlements, having a central digital node of status becomes far more consequential. If your right to work or proof of residence is encoded as a digital attribute, routine checks by employers, by landlords, by public services could instantly cross-check against immigration databases. What today is a manual, occasionally flawed administrative check becomes tomorrow a near-instant audit. The digital ID infrastructure might then be repurposed, consciously or not, to police status, flag mismatches, or even trigger adverse action.
For someone with a precarious visa, one small data error or mismatch could cause big trouble. Suppose an attribute says your residence expired when it didn't, or your status changed and the system failed to update you. When that digital credential is accepted as authorization everywhere, correcting the mistake becomes a fight. To avoid that, robust safeguards are essential. Legal limits barring surveillance users without warrant or judicial oversight, transparent logs of all access, built-in appeals and correct the record paths, and oversight by independent bodies. If the digital ID program is built without those limits, it risks turning a convenience tool into a control lever. When status changes, your digital identity shouldn't become the instrument of exclusion. Migrants, temporary residents, and citizens alike deserve guarantees that their private data and life status aren't weaponized. As this system rolls out, every milestone matters. How the trust framework is revised, how pilot schemes are regulated, which attributes are permitted, who governs revocations. For those affected most, migrants, asylum seekers, long-term foreign residents, it's vital to watch the technical details, demand legal guardrails, and insist that the tools serve people, not surveillance.
The UK is at a crossroads. Do we build a digital identity architecture that empowers people and preserves rights? Or one that centralizes power in databases and enforcement engines? The difference will shape daily life, access, dignity, and justice for millions of people living under shifting immigration regimes. When people talk about the UK's move toward digital ID, the debate quickly stretches beyond technology into questions of faith, politics, and society. For many religious communities, the concern is moral and even prophetic. Some Christians view a universal digital identity as uncomfortably close to the biblical imagery of a mark that controls buying and selling, a system that could erode individual freedom under the guise of efficiency. That symbolism resonates deeply, creating a fear that what begins as convenience could evolve into something spiritually compromising. Politically, critics argue that centralized identification gives enormous leverage to the state. In a democracy, any mechanism that makes surveillance frictionless and enforcement automatic raises red flags about civil liberties. The worry is not just about today's government, but about what future administrations might do with the same infrastructure. Trust in politicians is already fragile, and a digital identity system risks amplifying suspicion that leaders are more interested in control than in service. On a social level, the issue becomes one of equity. The UK is home to millions of migrants, temporary residents and foreign workers whose status is already complicated by shifting immigration laws. If access to housing, healthcare or work is tied to a digital ID, even small errors could mean exclusion from basic needs. Communities already on the margins fear a system that turns everyday transactions into checkpoints. That anxiety extends beyond migrants to older citizens, those without digital literacy, and people with disabilities who may struggle with a smartphone-centric world. There's also a deep cultural concern around privacy. British society has long valued the idea of not needing to carry papers or present proof of identity at every turn. A digital ID reverses that tradition, embedding constant verification into daily life. For many, it feels like a cultural shift away from trust and towards suspicion, a re-engineering of social interactions around data rather than human judgment. Finally, the issue of accountability troubles both religious leaders and secular activists. If a mistake happens, who fixes it? If someone is wrongly flagged, who takes responsibility? The fear is of a faceless system with no clear avenue for redress, where individuals are trapped in loops of algorithmic decisions. That sense of helplessness is socially corrosive, undermining confidence not only in technology, but in institutions themselves. Together, these concerns, spiritual unease, political mistrust, social exclusion, cultural resistance, and the demand for accountability, show why the debate over digital ID in the UK is not just about apps and databases, but about the very fabric of how people see freedom, belonging, and justice in their everyday lives. The question a lot of people are asking right now is whether the UK's push for digital ID has anything to do with the recent reform of indefinite leave to remain and the tightening of immigration rules. Officially, the government presents the digital ID programme as a tool for efficiency, designed to cut paperwork, reduce fraud, and make life easier when proving your age, your residency, or your right to work. On paper, it's all about convenience and modernisation. But if you look at the timing, the overlap is hard to ignore. The ILR reforms and the new immigration rules have placed fresh restrictions on who can settle permanently, extended waiting times for eligibility, and made family routes more complex. At the same time, enforcement has become sharper, with greater emphasis on ensuring that people whose status is temporary or conditional do not access the same rights as citizens or permanent residents. Digital ID, with its ability to carry verified attributes such as residency status or right-to-work permissions, fits neatly into this enforcement agenda. What once required employers or landlords to sift through physical documents could soon be as simple as scanning a QR code or tapping a phone. That instant verification sounds convenient for businesses, but it also creates a real-time, automated system of control, where people with uncertain immigration status are flagged immediately. For those affected by ILR reforms, this means their path to stability is not only legally more difficult, but also technologically more scrutinized. Supporters of digital ID will argue this alignment is about protecting the integrity of the immigration system, ensuring that rules are applied fairly and consistently. But critics worry it's part of a larger shift, where reforms to immigration law and the rollout of digital ID are not separate tracks, but intertwined strategies. Together, they could create an environment where migrants live under constant digital surveillance, where even small administrative errors lock them out of work, housing, or healthcare. So while the government doesn't frame digital ID as a direct byproduct of ILR reform, the reality is that the two developments reinforce each other. The legal changes create stricter conditions for foreigners living in the UK, and the technology provides the infrastructure to enforce those conditions instantly. For millions of migrants and their families, that connection makes digital ID not just a question of convenience, but a question of whether their future in the UK feels secure or precarious.
Right now in the UK, digital ID is still in the development and pilot phase, not full enforcement. The government has published its trust framework and continues to test certified providers, but there isn't a hard national deadline announced for mandatory use. What we can expect is a gradual rollout across specific sectors first: right to work checks, right to rent, access to certain government services, before it expands further. That means enforcement won't look like a single big switch being flipped overnight, but more like a steady tightening, where more and more aspects of everyday life require you to present a digital credential. Over the next few years, the government's goal is to make this system mainstream, embedding it so deeply that physical documents become secondary. Looking to the future, the prognosis varies depending on which lens you see it through. Religiously, many in Christian and other faith communities remain uneasy, interpreting a universal digital identity as part of a troubling shift towards centralized control over basic freedoms. Politically, digital ID has the potential to reshape the relationship between state and citizen, strengthening enforcement tools, but also increasing mistrust if safeguards are weak. Socially, the system risks deepening divides. Those comfortable with digital tools may glide through daily interactions, while older people, migrants with shifting status, or anyone facing errors could find themselves excluded from essential services. Economically, the government argues that streamlining identity checks will reduce fraud, attract business investment, and cut costs for employers and public services, but critics point out that economic efficiency often comes at the price of individual privacy and autonomy. Across these borders, religious, political, social, and economic, the prognosis is not uniform. For some, digital ID promises speed, security, and modernization. For others, it signals surveillance, exclusion, and cultural erosion. What will decide the outcome is not the technology itself, but the rules, safeguards, and political choices built around it. If transparency, accountability, and strong legal limits are enforced, digital ID could evolve into a trusted tool. If not, it may deepen the sense of control and mistrust already growing in British society. In short, the future of digital ID in the UK is less about when it arrives and more about how it is governed, and whether citizens, migrants, and communities of faith feel it protects their rights or undermines them.